Hello everyone, can you hear me? Right, thank you for coming out on such a cold evening. It's lovely to see you all here today. Firstly, I've received sincere apologies from David Cummings, the chair, who has a bad cold and cough and won't be able to be with us this evening. David is very fed up with that. He never has a cold, and he's never missed one of the 100+ meetings that he's been involved in, so I think it was quite a serious cold for him. Luckily, he sent me his speech, so I'll read out to you. You'll be seeing quite a lot of me today, I'm afraid. Firstly, health and safety. There are fire doors there at the back, and there is also a fire door here if you need it. If you need a comfort break, there's a toilet just outside the door here on the right, and there's also some ones downstairs. We aim to finish the meeting today by 7:30 at the very latest. I haven't had my tea this evening, and I'm not a pretty sight if I haven't had my tea, so I would ask that, though that you will have lots of questions, that we wrap by that at the very latest. So, first of all, I'd like to do a welcome and brief summary of events since September 2023 and until October 2024. David Cummings has asked me to read this out in his absence. This is an absolutely vital meeting where you have the opportunity, by following guidance, to change the course of history by actively taking part in the deposit plan consultation. Looking at the past, that is David, was called to make a presentation at short notice by Councillor Jane Lucas to the Place Scrutiny Committee meeting of the 28th of September 2023, last year, when the new September RLDP was discussed. In the intervening period, there have been 2 cabinet meetings, 1 public meeting, a place scrutiny meeting, and a full council meeting on the 26th of October 2024. Where possible, John T. Frank and I have spoken. John T. joined the committee in July 2024, and since then has provided invaluable research to our campaign, with input on air pollution from Frank Braheny. Until the end of September 2024, our objection had been to secure the removal of the site from the RLDP. We have demonstrated that the RLDP has more holes in it than a Swiss cheese, but Councillor Paul Griffiths has not been listening, as he wants to continue with his wish list of objectives which are unachievable, such as the creation of jobs, social housing, demographic change, to name 3. In October 2024, we changed our previous objective of taking Monmouth out of the preferred strategy candidate sites in the RLDP, and our new approach was promoting site CS0274 off the Wannistow Road as an alternative to CS0270 Dixton Road. One of the questions for Councillor Griffiths in David's speech on the 26th of October was to secure an agreement that site CS0274 would be seriously considered during the deposit plan consultation as an alternative to CS270, and Paul Griffiths has agreed to this. We had hoped to arrange a public meeting with Councillor Paul Griffiths and Head of Placemaking Craig O'Connor, but Paul Griffiths has refused this week a public meeting to discuss in detail the alternative site off the Wannistow Road. He says the need and the suitability of the alternative site must be demonstrated during the consultation process by residents. And as you know, the consultation period is live for responses up to the 16th of December. So we just have... It's gone off, is it? Okay. Jonathan, we seem to be getting a bit of feedback. Okay, thank you. John T has a lot of detail to provide you in item 2, is that better? Yeah, in item 2 of the agenda, and has made your involvement in the deposit plan process easier with the What Can I Do handout on your chairs. So I think that then hands across to me. Do you prefer the microphone, or is it better if I come forward and speak? No, use the mic. Use the microphone, right? Okay. Project. Okay. Hello everyone, thank you for coming to the meeting. My name is John T. Pearce and I live on the Hereford Road in Monmouth. I'm going to go through a number of objections to the development on the Dixton Road site and I will also compare it with a less sensitive site. There's a lot of detail in these slides, and it could be a bit hard to see some of the small words. If you'd like a copy, then if you send an email to no270houses@gmail.com, then we'll send that to you. As a group, we are not against housing development in Monmouth. We clearly need more affordable housing for Monmouth. We just believe that it should be the right housing in the right area with the right infrastructure. In September 2023, Monmouthshire County Council proposed 3 candidate sites for Monmouth. I think they selected the wrong site. The sites were at Dixton Road. Can I get that going? Right. Okay, the Dixton Road on the left-hand side, at Vauxhall Fields in the middle, and Wannistow Road on the left-hand side. They selected Dixton Road site, as far as I can work out, solely on the basis that it had more houses. They overlooked the Wannistow Road site, which I feel is a less sensitive site. And don't forget that in addition to the 270 houses proposed for the Dixton site, there are 220 more houses coming for Monmouth, 110 at Druin Farm, 60 on the Rockfield Road, and 50 more at Tudor Road in Wisham. So that's a total of 490 houses in total proposed, a big increase. And if we do nothing, they will be building houses on the Dixton Road site within 3 years. Or less, potentially. The Dixton Road site is a large site. It is the size of 20 football pitches. It will hold 270 houses, 405 cars, 618 residents, 266 dogs, and 232 cats. Now, good practice throughout history has always been that you get your drinking water upstream of your town for fairly obvious reasons. If there is any runoff pollution, this does not contaminate your water supply. This has been the case up till now, but would change with this development. The Romans understood it, the Victorians understood it, but we seem to have forgotten about it. Monmouth does not get its drinking water from a lovely reservoir up in the mountains, as people often believe. Monmouth gets its drinking water from the River Wye, the same polluted River Wye that is failing phosphate targets. The water source is the green tower of pipes that you will see just opposite the rowing club on the Wye. Water is pumped a short distance to the Mayhill Water Treatment Works. That's the building on the Habnot Road just opposite Liddell. It then is pumped up to a small covered reservoir on the Kimmin. It then flows down under gravity to Wisham, underneath the tarmac of the Wye Bridge, and into Monmouth and a few other settlements. Monmouth's drinking water, as you may have seen in the beacon, has been subject to a number of runoff pollution incidents. Our water is currently under 2 notices from the Drinking Water Inspectorate, one for pollution and one for cryptosporidium. And improvements to Monmouth's drinking water treatment works, there are 2 treatment works in Monmouth, one for drinking and one for sewage. The drinking treatment works don't get signed off by the Drinking Water Inspector until 2030. I did a freedom of information request on what was causing the pollution. I was quite shocked. We lost the mic? Oh, there it is. I was quite shocked. The first notice was because pollution contamination of hydrocarbons and volatile fatty acids, these are not good for health, in the River Wye. 73 people phoned the Welsh Water Contact Centre. That's the first thing that Welsh Water knew about it, is when people started complaining. So not a lot of safeguards there. I think the real number is much, much higher than 73, and we believe the incident went on for at least 2 days. It was described in the Water Inspector's annual report as a sudden change in river quality that resulted in one of the most significant taste and odour events in Monmouth, Wales for over a decade. And I have a couple of handouts of this if anyone wants one, or I can email it on to you. Monmouth's water is very susceptible to runoff pollution. And on the subject of runoff pollution, any runoff pollution from the Dixton Road site will flow into the River Wye via the network of brooks next to Dixton Church. It will enter the River Wye 400 metres upstream of where we get our drinking water. The site will be subject to runoff pollution from weed killers, pesticides, cleaning products, for instance, cleaning cars and patios, cat and dog poo, if you remember I mentioned 266 dogs and 232 cats, as well as road salt and decomposition from compost heaps and fallen leaves. And that doesn't include anything that a builder puts down the outside drain. The photo here shows runoff pollution coming out of a manhole on Hereford Road in September. Runoff pollution is and will be a problem for Monmouth. The Dixton Road site is in a special area of conservation for phosphates and is failing phosphate targets. But it's not all of Monmouth. Monmouth's divided into effectively two areas, and it's more or less bounded by the watershed on the Hereford Road, effectively that if it rains, water on the Osbaston side flows down into the River Monnow. If it's on the it's on the other side of the Hereford Road or in Wisham, it flows into the Wye. That is the area that's failing that catchment of phosphate targets. I've done a phosphate calculation on the site. I don't think the developer has, and I don't think Monmouthshire County Council have. Luckily, there's a phosphate calculator on the Somerset County website. You plug in the number of houses, the size of the site, the soil type, and whether there's sustainable drainage solution in place, and it then tells you the amount of runoff phosphates. Today, by using the fields for grazing cows, it generates 8 kilograms of phosphates. If they build the houses, this will, according to the calculator, increase to 16 kilograms of runoff phosphates, basically doubling the phosphate load from those fields. And any improvements in the sewage treatment works at Redbrook Road near Monmouth only benefit the River Wye south of Monmouth. The phosphate runoff from the Dixton Road site will increase phosphate levels all the way through the River Wye in Monmouth. I used to enjoy swimming in the River Wye, but it's going to be a while before I go back in. The developer has proposed something called a sustainable drainage solution, or SUDS, that you might hear about. It's not some fancy technology with lots of pipes. It is a pond. It's a pond with reeds. And the idea is that runoff water collects into the ponds, it slowly soaks into the ground in the pond, and helps the reeds grow. It's a process called nitrification. You then cut down the reeds and take them away from sight. That removes the nitrates. And SUDS is very useful in reducing nitrate pollution, but it only removes 15 to 24% of phosphates from the runoff water. The rest just washes off into the River Wye. And according to the British Geological Society, for infiltration-based SUDS to work effectively, the topsoil and the underlying geography should be free draining. Or in other words, they work better on the soil, free draining alluvial soil in Wannistow Road, rather than the heavy clay soil in Dixton Road. Let me show you. Here's a picture of the Dixton Road site that I took in February. I think you can see it is not free draining. And if you look at the colour of the water, you'll see that heavy impermeable clay. So what happens when a SUDS pond is full because it doesn't drain away and it starts raining? Well, I think you've got it. All the pollution gets picked up as the rain comes down, runs down a steep slope and straight over the top of the pond into the River Wye, straight into our drinking water. Nice. Traffic congestion. An extra 405 cars mean 362 extra journeys per day on a major pinch point, the A40 Dixton roundabout. It will create extra congestion. Due to the busy roundabout, we regularly have cars queuing to come out of Monmouth. And because cars queuing along the Dixton Road, the cars on the site will be ahead of them in the queue, and you have a sort of merge-in-turn rule where you let one in before you let other cars out. We calculate it will add up to 5 or 10 minutes to journeys coming out of Monmouth towards Dixton roundabout in busy times, particularly 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This will hit all of us, but will particularly hit people heading north, people travelling to Wysham, as well as people dropping off their kids at schools. Air pollution. Adding an extra 405 cars will also increase air pollution. And Frank is an expert on the subject, who's in the middle here. How much by? We don't know, because the County Council is not monitoring the pollutant PM 2.5 in Monmouth, let alone on the Dixon Road. And if you don't know what the levels are now, how do you know it's safe to increase it and what it will go up by? There is a private PM 2.5 monitor in Wybridge Street at Milking Solutions, which regularly shows levels higher than the World Health Organization guidelines. This is a screenshot I took last Monday, and it was showing levels of PM 2.5 of over 14. We think that it would be sensible to have a 24-month monitoring program for PM 2.5 and PM10 at the roundabout, and then only after a detailed projection of what the increased levels are should any site have get a go-ahead. And the residents are going to have to rely on their cars because the active travel routes are difficult. The nearest cycle route is 2 kilometres away, and cycling along the Dixon Road involves sharing the road with 4,400 vehicles a day. Here's a picture of the site entrance. Would you enjoy cycling along that? It's so scary. In contrast, the Wannistow Road site is well served by existing and future cycle routes. It has a national cycle route going past the front of the site, and it's very pleasant. I cycled along it last week. Monmouthshire's rare bats. Newton Court, which is less than 950 metres from the site, is home to Monmouth's endangered greater horseshoe bats. These bats are on the red list for extinction. Newton Court is a site of special scientific interest, and in the Wye Valley and Forest of Dean Bat Site Special Area of Conservation, it's a bit difficult to say, but is a protected area. It is protected as a European Natura 2000 site and should be heavily protected by law. The site at Newton Court is one of only 3 sites in Wales and the only one in Monmouthshire. And these bats delight the residents of Monmouth, particularly along Hereford Road and in Osbaston. And this is a freeze frame from a video I took from my garden. And in summer, they're there most nights at dusk. Building houses would remove 20 football pitches of grazing land that the bats rely to feed on, rip out established hedges, add artificial light, and interrupt bat commuting lines. How could this possibly benefit the bats? The site is within the 3-kilometre core sustenance zone, the endangered greater horseshoe bats as specified in the Council's Habitats Regulations Assessment. In contrast, the Wannistow Road site, you'll just see on the left, is outside of that zone and would create little problems for the bats. The bats, and here's a picture that shows how close it is to Newton Court, the bats rely on dung insects from grazing cattle and also from hedgerows. Removing this habitat removes their food, would hurt the bats. Monmouthshire County Council has a legal obligation to protect biodiversity. But it's okay, because Redroof Homes have supplied Monmouthshire County Council with a flawed ecological report written by a consultancy saying it will cause little harm to the bats. They put in 5 sensors in the surrounding fields that are much closer to Newton Court, and they put 1 in the corner of the development site. So they're able to say the development site was much lower than all the other sensors, so there is limited bat activity on the site. The council have said it will actually benefit the bats, as they will be provided with a buffer zone, the buffer zone they already have, and that after ripping out the existing hedgerows, the developer will plant a new row of trees that will create a green motorway for the bats. It's unbelievable. You can't make this stuff up. And the developer has, I'm sounding a bit indignant here, but the developer has applied to do an environmental impact assessment. Not to do an environmental impact assessment is normally the case with big developments. There is a consultation going on currently. I've raised objections to this, but David has been told that this is a private consultation and not a public consultation, and any public comments will be ignored. I don't think that's democracy in action. We need help. We need help on biodiversity from environmental pressure groups. And if you know anyone, please ask them to help on our behalf. The Wye Valley National Landscape. It's within the landscape setting and highly visible from the Wye Valley National Landscape, which used to be called an Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty. And the ANOB has the same protection in law as a national park. But it just doesn't include the area on the map. It also includes the area that could harm the ANOB. It's called the landscape setting, for instance, with views. And you can see here the proximity to the ANOB. The site starts about 200 metres away, and the whole of the site is within 1 kilometre. So let's have a look at what a landscape setting in an ANOB looks like. Here's an example from the Chilterns ANOB. And they said this is inappropriate development that harms it. You can see at the top, just fields and trees. The other one, a rather ugly looking housing estate. So that is what is not acceptable. Let's have a look at our site. Here's a view of Monmouth from the Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, so the national landscape. I agree. I would hope you would agree this is a beautiful pastoral scene. Oh dear. That's the area that it's going to cover. Not so attractive now. It is also within a 1 kilometre landscape setting of a scheduled ancient monument. That is the 11th century site at Dixton Mound. Let's have a look on the map. Yes, it's less than 300 metres away. And that should have been consulted on with CADO. The site has a land map sensitive value of outstanding stroke high for historical interest. It is also next to a Roman road, which runs more or less underneath the Dixton Road. It ran from Blestium to Ariconium, or Monmouth to Weston under Benyard, just the other side of Ross. It is close to 2 conservation areas, and according to Archwillio, there is a Roman metalworking site underneath the fields. Prime agricultural land. Welsh planning laws state that agricultural land should effectively be conserved as a finite resource for the future, because once it's gone forever. But it does say if land in grades 1, 2, or 3A need to be developed, and if there is a choice between the different grades, development should be directed to the lower grade land. Let's have a look. Dixton Road is the highest grade available around Monmouth. It is 80% grade 2. There is no, as far as I can see, there's no grade 1 land in Monmouthshire at all. Wannistow Road, on the other hand, is a lower grade land, mainly 3A, and according to Policy Wales, that should have been selected instead of the Dixton Road site. Let's hope that the planning inspector picks this up from our responses to the consultation. Landscape sensitivity. Monmouthshire County Council has a landscape sensitivity report they wrote 2 years ago, and that recommends the area that has the most opportunity is west of the recent expansion at Wannistow. It has the lowest landscape sensitivity in Monmouth. It's the purple zone on the map. So why has Monmouthshire County Council not followed the recommendations of its own report? There's also flooding, as Glyn pointed out to me the other day. The entrance to the Dixon Road site, about 15% of the site, is in a flood zone. And as you can see from the photo I took earlier, that could cause problems for emergency vehicles. In contrast, there's almost no, there's about 5% on the Wannistow Road site, and a recent a council report on Wannistow Road site reads, whilst further assessment needs to be undertaken over surface water flooding, the amount on site is minimal and likely to be overcome. There are loads and loads more objections you could have. For instance, is the 50% affordable housing realistic? Road safety,
on the Dixton Road or Dixton Close. Is there capacity for the doctors and dentists? There's the lack of the railway station, dark skies. The site seems to have no playgrounds for children. There's a lack of accessible design because it's on quite a steep slope, so it's very hard for a wheelchair to get up. There are limited job opportunities. There's the environmental impact of construction, public opposition, and concerns about future expansion. And believe me, I think this is only the tip of the wedge. I think once they've built on the bottom of the fields, they'll keep on trying till they go all the way up to the English border. The Wannistow Road site is ready to go. It already has 2 access points off the existing development. It's within easy walking distance of major employers. It's less than 100 metres to the new Siltbuster factory. It's 200 metres from the popular Tri-Wall factory, 300 metres from Singleton Court, where a lot of people work, 400 metres to Mandarin Stone, which has recently expanded. If you lived there, you could walk to work easily. And if you don't fancy cooking lunch, there's a great burger van at Singleton Court. My guilty secret, they do a great bacon roll. The Wannistow Road site is also better served by active travel routes. You can see on the map that the existing or planned routes pretty well go to the front door of the site. In comparison, the Dixton site, 2 kilometres down the Dixton Road to the nearest site entrance. I've done a comparison of the 2 sites. I've got a number of copies here. If anyone would like one, I'll put them down here so you can grab hold of those. So the next section is, what can I do? Well, the first thing that you could do is respond to the public consultation on the RLDP. Please use your own words if you can. 1 response per person, so if you've got 3 people in the house, you can send in 3 responses. And if you've sent one in, you've thought of something else, you can also send that in. Again, it's not limited just to one go of it. There's 3 ways of doing it. The hard way is through the website. I tried it. Yeah, it's hard. I wouldn't advise it. It's got lots of questions like, what do you think of the spatial constraint strategy of the council? What do you think of the future generation strategy of the... And then when you get to the question you want on the HA4 site, they only give you a box that big to fill in. So you can only actually get 6 objections into there. So the easiest way, send in an email, send it to planningpolicy@monmouthshire.gov.uk, and make sure that you put the title something like RLDP Consultation Response from John G. Pierce, or whatever your name is, as the subject, and send a copy to your county councillor as well, so they get to know what's going on, which would be good, and encourage other people to do the same. If you prefer, you can do it by post, and please make sure that you include an alternative location. My recommendation would be Wannistow, but that's entirely up to you. Once you've done that, the other thing that would be really, really useful is to contact any local, national, or environmental groups that can help us. So, for instance, if you know or are a member of the Friends of the Upper Wye, Friends of the Lower Wye, if you're a member of a local fishing club, if you are a member of the rowing club, if you're a member of a bat society, I think there's a Monmouthshire Bat Society, if you know anyone in a wildlife organisation, Gwent Wildlife Trust, if you're a member of a history or archaeology club, if you know any environmental groups or anyone who's in one, like Save the Wye, or Transition Monmouth, or a school PTA, or you're a member of the National Trust, or a member of CADU, or you go to any of the Wye Valley NL meetings, or you just start fancying writing letters. The more people that we can contact in these bodies, the more powerful it will be. There tends to be a tendency to sort of ignore residents, but other bodies representing can do well. And if you contact these organisations, if you could also ask if their members, if they can send out a message to their members, also to do a consultation, that increases the numbers going through. And I think, is anyone from Monmouth Rowing Club here? No. That's one that I think would be quite good because they've got some quite strong things. So, so that would be really useful. Keeping up pressure on county councillors, I think, is very important. There may be another vote early next year. The voting was really close at the last meeting, much closer than anyone thought. I think our message is starting to get out there. It was 21 in favour, 20 against, and 1 abstention. 2 of Monmouth's councillors voted for the proposed site, 1 abstained. So we need to see if we can change opinions on these. Luckily, on that vote, had it been happened? No, you didn't vote for it, sorry. Jane didn't vote for it. So, yeah. And also, we have one other thing. Martin Newell is with us today. He's the new councillor for the town ward, which covers Dixton Road. County councillor. And he was elected something like 4 hours after the vote happened. And Martin has campaigned to stop the houses as part of his campaign. So the balance is already changing. And on Monday, Councillor Paul Griffiths, who has been really gung-ho on the site, appeared to have softened a little bit. And he wrote to David Cummings and said, on balance, the Leesbrook has been considered to be the most appropriate site for Monmouth. However, the choice was finely balanced, and there are arguments for and against the proposal. We want to hear the views of local people, and we will consider the comments provided as part of the public consultation. The arguments in favour of the Wannistow site would be all the more influential if it could be shown they were supported by residents in the area. Keeping in touch with councillors, I think, is part of that, showing that overall support. The other thing is attending public meetings. The next one is on Monday. There is a meeting of the full Monmouth Town Council to discuss the RLDP. I'll be speaking in the public participation part of that. I've been asking them to come up with with their own preferred site for Monmouth. It's a bit of a tall ask, but if you don't ask, you don't get. And if people could come along on Monday to support me would be great. What I've noticed is in a lot of these council meetings, when you have members of the public along, and we had Mike and Chris came along to the last meeting, when members of the public come along, the councillors seem to act differently. Rather than sort of fighting political games themselves, they tend to take on board that they're being watched. And I think their voting behaviour starts to change. And certainly what they say changes as a result. So I'll be outside at Shire Hall, 6:45 on Monday, and it would be delighted if anyone can join me. The first bit of the presentation, they normally get the public in, and then you can leave fairly soon afterwards. I'll probably stay for the whole debate, but if someone could join me, that would be great. There's also the Scrutiny Committee meeting on the 5th of December, and the full council meeting where I've asked to speak again. I've got 2 minutes to make my case on the 12th of December, and it would be great if we could fill the public gallery again then, because if we're in their faces all the time, it just shows that there is objection to this site. And there is also, David asked me to put in, there are 2 deposit plan consultations. I think these are sort of adverts for the RLDP. I think the first one is a drop-in session on 25th of November from 2 till 7, and there's also a virtual engagement on the 5th of December. And the last thing you can do if you're not already is join the mailing list, and we can keep you updated on progress. There is a plea from the Treasurer, who said our bank balance has gone down low. We do have costs with putting the signs up. We do have costs with, we've got to pay for this meeting room. So the sort code and account number are there, and if you could contribute, that would be great. Monmouth is the jewel in its surrounding countryside. It is a special place. Let's keep it that way. It's all in your hands now. Thanks for listening to me. Thank you. So, questions and answers. Does anyone? There's a lot of information. We don't. We have a. Okay, the question is, I haven't mentioned about the access onto the Hereford Road.
Emergency access?
Yes, there is an emergency access route onto the Hereford Road through the, what's the name of the Rickfield, sorry, just through the entrance to the Rickfield, where Glyn lives. Apparently it's only meant to be for emergency vehicles, but I think will also be used by people on foot, possibly by bicycle. I don't know who's going to keep the key, but just like the entrance to the comprehensive school that was on the Dixon Road that was only ever meant to be used occasionally, I think once the gate gets opened, it will stay open and people will continue to use it. Yeah. So the question was, if there is an ambulance coming from somewhere like Brecon that is outside of the area, how would they possibly have the key to get in? That's certainly a very, very good point. Thank you. We do have a microphone here, if anyone has a question. Do you want to come up or do you want to just speak?
Actually, I have a question in regards to that, which is, if Monmouth is already blocked, hence the emergency exit, what is the point because Monmouth is blocked?
Question here? Did you want to come up to the microphone or? Okay. Is it on, Jonathan? Yep.
Regarding the Rickfield, and the last week of September, the first week of October, there was a very thorough survey undertaken using the current GPS survey equipment. It extended from Vineacre up to the Rickfield and above, also into the Rickfield, and it went to the extent of someone with a measuring tape from the edge of the tarmac into the hedges to find the growth line of those houses either side. The second thing that has been going on from about the end of August up till 2 or 3 weeks ago, there has been regular shooting at all times from about 7 in the morning till evening. Whether that is pest control or otherwise, it has been extensive from Manson Lane across the golf course, right down and up to Hereford Road. No, it has been down in the fields. We have heard it while we've been in the garden. It has been widespread across all the fields. Thank you.
Certainly, I think there's lots of surveys going on in that field. There's now an acoustic measuring survey going on that I think came in last week. We see regularly people there. I think Redrow Homes think this is a shoe-in, that's a done deal, and really we have to fight that. Question, do you want to come up to the microphone? Yeah, the deadline for the responses is the 16th of December. I think is that a Monday or is that a Friday? But basically, if it's after that date, it's too late to get that in. We don't really get another bite of the cherry. This is the critical one. Is there a question there? Did you want to come up to the microphone? Okay. Yes. Yeah, my take is that I don't think we'll ever convince Councillor Griffiths about this, but we might be able to convince the planning inspector, because all of your responses get bundled up into a huge document, or hopefully it's huge if we get enough responses back to it. That then goes off to the planning inspector, who I understand reads every single response that goes back. So they will start to see patterns and trends, and you can put the evidence in there, and they will ensure that due process happens. But it does need to get across to that.
Can I just ask in relation to that question?
Certainly.
Is it therefore better to use all the arguments or a few when you're writing in? Because you've given us a huge letter. Do we put them all in, or do we just put a few?
I think it's really as you feel. Jane, do you have a view on this?
Some people have their own arguments as well, so whatever suits more, but basically they have to be planning arguments. And then at the end of the day, that's the bit that crunches the board, has to be a planning argument. I'm looking at my colleague over there for concurrence. So it's really important, because John T's done, I think, a humongous amount of work on all of this.
Thank you. So there was a question. I'll take a question here, then I'll take a question here. There's a gentleman here. Sorry, I couldn't. Is there a counter move for the Wanstead site? No. Okay. Oh, there's one for the Druin site, I know. Is that for the Wanstead Road, or is that for the Druin farm site? It's for this one? Okay, right here. There was a question here. I think copying the councillors will also only get us so far, where if we really want to get this overturned, what we need is to be able to reach key decision makers, for instance, in the Welsh Government, in the Wye Valley AONOB, in all the basically statutory bodies, Natural Resources Wales, and other voluntary organisations that are more used to lobbying, that have access into those routes. I can propose a number of people, but also some of these organisations, some of these environmental pressure groups are used to doing that. They have regular meetings with ministers and people like that. So I've started just looking on the website, starting with the email address, getting the phone number, and I've just started phoning up and saying, I'm concerned. I've done it recently about the environmental impact assessment. I'm not allowed to be consulted. You are. Could we have a chat, please? Can I send you a document? I send off little sections of my report to them. And, you know, it's early days, but I'm making sure that the people who have to make the decision have at least had some information to make that on, rather than, in the case of the environment impact assessment, what is inaccurate, possibly misleading information from the developer. So, for instance, they've called the site, not site land at Leesbrook or land at Ixton Road, they've called it land east of Monmouth, hoping that no one would pick it up. Well, we did. They've also said things like the zone for the bats is a 1 kilometre zone and we're outside that. It's like, that's nonsense, it's a 3 kilometre zone. They've also said the land on the site is 63% grade 3B. It's nonsense. And so we're having to fight to get our messages heard against this information that, you know, hopefully is just an error on the part of the developer and is nothing deliberate, or the developer's agent. Question? As far as I can work out, there is no 106 money that will happen. All of the 106 money is going to pay for the affordable housing. That's part of the deal. Jane, you probably know this more than I.
affordable housing, it's and carbon neutral, by the way, okay, which is brilliant. I'm not against that by any means for it, but it's going to cost money, and it's going to cost the developer money, which means the pot for Monmouth, Section 106 money, will be a lot smaller or negligible to nothing. Which also brings the fact, the one argument you've got here is the active travel route, which they have spent an awful lot of money on the bottom of Monmouth, i.e. removing the roundabout by Bridges to a T-junction. Okay, that's active travel money, and all the route back through to Westfield Lane, is it? I've got the name of the road. Sorry? Yeah, no, before that, up the side of the Vets. Williamsfield Lane. I don't know if anybody's walked up through it. It's all lovely and tarmac. And the interesting bit is a little bit of land that runs between Natural Animal Feeds, or Daily Eggs as I knew it when I was a kid, to where the new houses are at Kingswood Gate, is still muddy. And they still haven't come to agreement and a deal with the landowner of that, but that's in the process. So it would be much easier for them to finish that off and have a safe, active travel route in, also there to their jobs, then to create another active travel route from the proposed site at the bottom of Monmouth. And in creating a possible active how much worse it's got. So say the Habs have put the 2 boys and girls senior school up at the top, so that all the traffic now up there is quite, parking is worse than ever. So for me, that is an argument. Okay, the active travel route has already been established at the bottom of Monmouth. They've spent a lot of money, you can see it yourself.
Just a question. So,
Yes,
if
sir.
we succeed now
Yes.
in the new year, how much of a reprieve is that, or is this just going to keep coming back and back and back until they might win?
It may come back again. I think the reprieve is, I think the plan is for 8 years. So the idea is that the plan gives certainty of what will and won't happen within those 8 years. So if it's not in the RL, in what becomes the local development plan, then and someone applies for planning permission, they can, as I understand it, there's a good grounds for refusal because it's not in the plan. If it is in the plan and they ask for planning permission, it still has to go through the planning permission arrangement, and we can fight it at the planning permission. That's really picking little bits off, saying you haven't done that, you haven't done the other. So it would give a reprieve, but they almost certainly will be back later because there's a lot of money to be made from those fields. Martin,
Johnson, has any study been made about the impact on local schools? Because that Dixon site isn't Wysham, it's not Osbaston. And also, don't forget Haberdash is next year. They're going to have pupils that need spaces in state schools as well, with VAT.
Yes.
So that needs to be considered. Now, MCC are the paymasters of the state schools in this area. So where would those pupils go on Dixon Road? They would go Osbaston. Now, has Osbaston been consulted? There's 270 houses, 270 families. Let's say half of them have school-aged children. That's a lot of school places to find, together with the additional from the Habs VAT increase. They could be a really strong organisation to get hold of and to have your argument about this. There's just not the school places. What is there?
Rebecca, did you want to say something on that? I think you had done some research. Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Yes, sir. There was a question at the back there. question, well, I don't know if everyone heard it. Has the sewage works got capacity?
The only reason that Monmouth has been brought back into as it can is because the sewage plant on Redwood Road will be operational by March 2025, and they're saying they're going to take 80% of the phosphates out of water, which is created partly by our waste. So that's one of the reasons that we've actually been brought back into the deposit plan. The other big concern is your drinking water. As Johnson actually said, our drinking water is taken from the River Wye. Two notices have been served on Welsh Hills for this year in respect of Cryptus brilliant. A high possibility of Cryptus brilliant getting into our drinking water. One is for Cryptus brilliant, and the other is because the sanitisation of our water falls below the level required to get rid of Cryptus brilliant. Those notices were served on Welsh Water in September this year. The water inspector having found a problem in last year. So at this moment in time, that water preparation won't be completed until 2030. And as Johnson pointed out, there are reports from the new council goes in upstream of our water. And we're not the only ones with the problem. 3 sites further north of us, going into England, also have Cryptus brilliant, high risk of Cryptus brilliant getting into their drinking water. So it's coming downhill to us from England, which is then going to possibly be exacerbated by 217 houses on that one site. On another point, demographics, if I would just like to add there, we are in a declining population globally, not just Wales, not just Monmouth, it's a global issue. However, there was a massive spike globally in 2021. Not surprisingly, because of COVID in 2020, a lot more children were born, and that spike was over the birth rate of 2019, which means from 2026, for at least 1 year group, and for 18 years as they progress through the school, we are going to have a spike in children population. So there may not be sufficient school places. I don't know, because I don't know how many spikes we've got in Monmouth.
Thank you. Yeah, Cryptus brilliant is quite a nasty tummy bug. The problem with it is that it is not it is chlorine resistant. So our normal technique for cleaning our water, just pour some chlorine over the top of it, doesn't actually deal with Cryptus brilliant, which is why they're upgrading the treatment works, which won't be signed off until 2030. It is being upgraded. It will get better in the future, but sorry. And just also to say that if you notice that your drinking water looks funny, tastes funny, smells funny, then what you should do is you should phone the Welsh Water Contact Centre, because that might be the first sign of something not quite right. Also contact Environmental Health at the Monmouthshire County Council. Do we have any more questions or comments?
Just one more.
Yeah.
It's a very delicate issue for all.
Yes.
Just interested, Jane know why one councillor abstained? Like, is every right councillor on an issue like this? I'm just wondering why.
I'm very happy to say, but I'm not sure I should say it quite so. Yeah, look at my needs a bit. Can I say it?
Just get on with it. Come on, be careful. What have you heard on the grapevine?
Okay, so
Just go with it.
Just before you do that, I think there is a recording going on, so just wanted to let you know that. It's being recorded here so that we can make notes.
we did have a
The, sorry, go on. The abstention was actually also a move forward for us because 2 weeks earlier, the same council had voted in favour of the proposals going through to consultation. And so an abstention, because we've been making more noise about this, was a move. If we could move a little bit further, that would be certainly rather nice. Okay, any other questions? We'll take a couple more before we break. Yes, if there's only one thing you could do, would be to respond to the consultation. If there's two things you could do, if there's someone else in your house, help them to respond. And if there's a third thing, would be to get on to any other organisations that you think could help us. If you've got a friend in the rowing club or someone like that. There's just one gentleman here who had a question.
Yeah, hi. I basically just want to make an observation or a comment. I think that we can all write in, as many of us probably have done in terms of other local planning issues of smaller residential situations, but I do feel quite strongly whether we ought to have a feeling of getting the press involved and also taking more of an active role in making life difficult for the planners. Because certainly my experience is that you can go to the planning authorities and make what I think are reasonable objections, but ultimately there's only 3%, I think, of planning applications that are declined at county level. So it's basically a rubber stamp job, despite the objections that most people put in. And I think that given all the information you've provided, which I think is incredible, it makes me even more annoyed to feel that the Monmouthshire County Council haven't adopted a similar attitude. And it just shows you that basically we are the little people against almost like a monolith that basically writes its own rules. I know this from my own experience of helping other local residents. They don't have any democratic process at all. It's merely a tick box exercise. And you alluded to Jonty about having 2 minutes, which is a ridiculously small amount of time. In my case, I made a presentation which I was only allowed 4 minutes. And it's everything, planning-wise, I feel is stacked very much in their favour because they write the rules, they change the rules, and we have little input into it. And the only way, I think, above and beyond mail-in and letters, etc., is to have, for the future, maybe a more concerted approach.
We need to do. In terms of local press, we have got good relations with the Beacon. We have now got 6 stories published in the Beacon. The original story on drinking water contamination was one that we wrote. Subsequent ones on cryptosporidium, we also wrote those. The publicity this week for the Beacon. But that is the only line of press that we've been pressing at this stage. Probably there is other press in South Wales and also possibly nationally that we could certainly get involved with. A lot of it is just down to bandwidth. Frank? Oh, sorry. Thank you.
What I don't think we need to do personally is to make a wall between one part of Monmouth and the other, and us feeling like NIMBYs, posh end of town. Let's have you all down the bottom end of town where it's all rubbish and sorry, I hope that won't get quoted. But that is a feeling. Some people in the Overmono area feel that Osbaston is the posh end, and probably they feel the same in Wiseham, and that we're just looking after our own interests. I think there are plenty of arguments without saying, let's build it downtown. There are plenty of arguments that we can recommend. There are plenty of empty places within Monmouth, the built-up areas in Monmouth, are not being used properly, and planning is going just getting lost with all the. Sorry, it's one of my things. We ought to use what we've got. And I think without making an argument between two parts of Monmouth, if we could do that, certainly I'm going to write in, and I'm sure everyone here is, but I don't think we need to make a division within our town.
I think the only thing I would say about making a division, yes, it is very fast. It's just it should be there, not there. It is evidence based on rules.
In my experience, if you want to change someone's opinion, just saying, no, we're not doing it, or you shouldn't do it, only gets you so far. There has to be some alternative. And, I've racked my brains for a better alternative than this, and, I can't find that. We've tried to say, why isn't it developed in other areas like Abergavenny? That didn't go down at all well. That actually made people very, very hostile to it. We said that Monmouth shouldn't have it. It doesn't wash. The alternative site potentially might. But yeah, if you don't feel comfortable on that, if you're doing an objection, don't put in an alternative site.
Just on that point, I don't think we discussed, is that one of the problems with large development is that it is a large development, and it's not done in a managed way, like if you build in small managed things. There are alternatives that say actually that amount of houses gets divided into small, little plots throughout Monmouth that makes it suddenly so the impact is divided amongst the whole town. We don't know, not that I'm saying we need another
Yeah.
600 houses, we really don't. But if you were to reduce the amount of houses needed to do that tick box, but it's smaller ones.
I think the danger here is that we're drinking at the last chance saloon. The chance to have done that was 12 months ago in the previous consultation, and we didn't notice it. So we're having to kind of slam the anchors on that. Frank, you had a comment. I think we'll take one more after that.
Yes, I mean, to take up the point of this gentleman here about the desks in democracy, I certainly suffered with that on the 24th of October when I wasn't able to speak, and I have actually challenged the head of democracy about that issue. But what was interesting was, what my challenge was that 3 minutes, frankly, is absolute nonsense, particularly when I've been talking about air policy. What can you say in 3 minutes about air policy? And his response was, well, it's actually a reasonable amount of time, but the constitutional chamber of the county council is going back to the county councillors, and it is therefore their responsibility to change the allotted time for people to speak. So just on that point, and supporting this gentleman's point, I would absolutely urge the county councillors to please give people at least 5 minutes to actually have a conversation. And just finally, very quickly, I do want to support Anthea's particular point, because what you must not lose sight of is
Thank you. One final comment before we break. Thank you. Frank.
Where we are, we look across those fields and there are power lines. 5 years ago, for between a pair of the poles and another half distance on several of those lines was almost end to end of house martins. This year I counted a total of 18 birds before they migrated for the winter. They feed on insects, as do the bats. Also, forgotten it, the legs go next. We used to have starlings and they have completely disappeared. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would just like to say to everyone, thank you for coming. If there's one thing you can do is to complete the consultation before the 16th of December. And if anyone fancies a trip to a town council meeting on Monday, Shire Hall, I'll be outside at 6:45. And if you could support me, that would be very, very gratefully appreciated. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Basically everybody